Now, Republicans and Democrats must join forces again to confront an urgent national crisis.
Donald Trump makes his case for the border wall to Congress and to the American people. Tonight, a week later than he'd planned, the U.S. president gave his State of the Union address calling for unity and security. Now, to help us dig into Trump's speech, we turn to our panel of U.S. political insiders. David Frum is a former speechwriter for President George W. Bush. Elena Beverly is a former Obama White House official. And Jay Shabria is a Republican strategist. Hello to the three of you. So we've got lots to go through, so let's get right to it. And David, maybe I'll start with you. We'll just do a quick go around. You know a thing or two about writing a good speech. What do you think of what you heard?
The president didn't have a plan. He didn't know why he was there. He didn't know what he was trying to accomplish. Sometimes he was trying to rouse his base. Sometimes he was vaguely nagging the Democrats about working with them, but not offering anything that they could agree to. I think the sense of internal indiscipline was showcased by the enormous length and by the fact that the president could not remember at the beginning that he's supposed to wait to be invited to talk by the Speaker of the House, and then he's supposed to address her. He completely forgot about all of that.
Jay, I'm going to let you have a take on that. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a pretty disjointed speech, and I'm not sure what the main takeaway is from it. But what I would say is in the second half of the speech, there was this definite populist tone. When you talk about the cost of prescription drugs, you talk about infrastructure, NAFTA, border security, infrastructure, those types of things. There's that populist tone that he's trying to strike, that he's always struck through his presidency, and that's the thing that I think will be remembered for the speech.
And Elena, there was a lot that was tackled in this speech. What stood out for you?
Well, it stood out for me that fear-mongering was still a centerpiece of this speech. Immigration was about 14 minutes of the speech, and throughout it, it was flagging for everyone that that our migrant communities are ramp criminals and causing harm to the security of the country, even though the vast majority of them are seeking asylum at the border. And then, for me, what stands out is the claim that we would be at war with North Korea, but for President Trump's savior. So the fear-mongering stood out for me.
Okay, North Korea is certainly one issue, but just on what you were saying a moment ago, let's talk about the border wall. So have a listen to what Donald Trump said in his address about that.
This is a moral issue. The lawless state of our southern border is a threat to the safety, security, and financial well-being of all America. We have a moral duty to create an immigration system that protects the lives and jobs of our citizens.
And Jay, he also made mention of large organized caravans on the march. Tell me, who is he speaking to there in that moment? Is it Americans at large, or is it his base, or someone else entirely?
Well, he's speaking to his base first and foremost. That's usually the first audience he looks at. But this issue of immigration, even when you talk about caravans, cuts across America. There's a sense that America's immigration system is broken. And until the Democrats, which they've been unable to come to the table with any type of solution, actually do say, this is what we're for, they're going to be perceived as being for open borders. And this is largely a win for the president when he talks about these kinds of things.
But even within the Republican Party, right, there's disagreement about whether a border wall is the way to go about it.
The wall's a symbol. The wall is whatever Donald Trump wants it to be. It doesn't necessarily have to be a concrete barrier. He can claim victory anytime he wants to. But this issue, basically, the longer he keeps it going, the longer he has the Democrats saying, we don't want anything, and that means that they're for open borders.
Elena,
what's so crazy about that? What's so crazy about that, though, is in that same speech, President Trump, now of course he doesn't ever mean it, but he still said it, it's in the speech, called for raising immigration numbers to the highest levels ever seen in history. So if you are someone who is concerned about immigration, look, I actually tend to have restrictionist views on immigration. Those of us who care about immigration think the problem is not that the illegal immigration part is so violent and chaotic, it's that the total level numbers of people coming into the country, given the states of artificial intelligence and what's happening to robotics, those numbers are too big. But the president said, the problem that you actually have, I'm going to make it worse, and the problem that we don't have, I'm going to spend billions of dollars to not solve that.
But Elena, is there anything that the president could have said in this particular address that the Democrats would have been receptive to hearing?
I think that if he had begun by saying that there are alternatives to a wall, again, using technology, other forms of surveillance at the border, I think those would have actually resonated with the Democrats. But I will say this: starting off with the moral issue requires us to clamp down on immigration. That just rings hollow when it comes from the mouth of the president who has ripped children away from their families and put them in cages at the border. He just has no moral authority to speak to morality when it comes to security and immigration at the border.
One thing, whose own companies have been revealed in the past week to be huge employers of illegal labor. One of the reason that illegal aliens come to the United States is to work illegally. They couldn't do that if there weren't illegal employers who didn't care about the status of their employees. And what we've learned in the past week is that 5 of the Trump golf clubs have been employing illegal labor. In the case of his club in Westchester, the illegal workers were a majority of the employees. For the president then to say this is the crisis of our time, and 2 years into his own, it's only 2 years into his own administration that he began to do something about it in his own enterprises.
Right. So how
much of a moral issue can that be?
So clearly, I mean, this is a divisive issue, right? On the issue of bridge building and cooperation and compromise, let's have a listen to what the president said about unity.
We must reject the politics of revenge, resistance, and retribution, and embrace the boundless potential of cooperation, compromise, and the common good.
Okay, so Jay, we had the bad R words, we had the good C words.
Yeah.
But the backdrop, of course, is the ticking time bomb, right? The fact that another government shutdown could be coming in as few as 10 days.
Yeah, look, I don't think the president can allow another government shutdown. He got vastly outmaneuvered by Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats the last time, and it hurt his numbers, and it hurt his numbers in a way that actually might have a lasting effect. So it is in his best interest to try to figure this out, claim victory for the wall, claim victory on some of this border funding, and move on with the things that he knows that he can start to win.
Let's explore this issue of building consensus by running another clip. This is something that the president said on the subject of a very contentious topic, abortion.
To defend the dignity of every person, I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children who can feel pain in a mother's womb.
David, what's the thinking there in bringing that up?
That's not a consensus building. That is absolutely red meat for the base. And this takes place in this context, which is one of the justices of the Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, seems to be in poor health. And while we all wish her well, it's quite possible that President Trump will, before he leaves office, appoint Ruth Bader Ginsburg's successor. If that happens, he has the opportunity to create a court majority that will decisively overturn Roe versus Wade. Right now, there's theoretically a 5-4 conservative majority on the court, but the Chief Justice, John Roberts, doesn't like to do big precedent-breaking decisions. But one more conservative justice, and it could happen. And so people are going to be watching. If the president is so interested in consensus, does he nominate, should that time come, a consensus-type judge, or does he go for the gusto, as he's done with his 2 previous nominees? That legislation that he's talked about won't have any effect so long as Roe versus Wade is there. We are jostling now for the post-Roe environment, and we'll see what the president's intentions are about that.
Elena, I can see you want to chime in on this.
Well, so, I mean, actually, the legislation that he's talking about out of Virginia never made it out of committee. So he's in part referring to legislation in New York, but his larger point about respecting the dignity of every person apparently, in his mind, doesn't actually apply to women, the women who would actually carry a child. And in this instance, the legislation in Virginia would have simply made the decision about an abortion be that of a woman and her doctor. So I think that this is, again, the reproductive rights have been an area of division since time began, and so he's not. This is him moving away from a spirit of unity toward division, and I also believe it is a flag to the states to suggest to them that this is their time to pass legislation that would curtail the rights of women in favor of a fetus.
And Jay, very quickly, I want to let you just chime in.
Just remember, the backdrop of this was the governor of Virginia, who was embroiled in a whole other scandal, starting this off by talking about how infanticide was okay. And so late-term abortions is actually kind of a universal place where people say, you know what, we need to get rid of those. So I would actually find fault with David on this. I think that there's a lot of consensus behind getting rid of late-term abortions, and on a very narrow way there.
We have 15 seconds left. David, I want to let you have the final word. Just on the question of Trump's capacity to expand his support between tonight and 2020.
He's hoping only to get back to 45%. One of the things Canadians need to pay attention to is that Trump threatened more trade wars. The question is, will he have the votes in Congress to back him up as the U.S.-Canada trade agreement comes for a vote in Congress? He talks about it as if it's a done deal. It ain't a done deal.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's been fabulous talking to you. David, Elena, Jay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.